It really depends on the process that you need to go through, you know. There's this story I always like telling because sometimes artists get pissed, you know. They say, why aren't we starting to work? I mean, what is it? And I tell them, this is the work. Recording should be easy when you know what you want to do, more or less. Now, I just want to kind of emphasize that this is just to get going. Normally, when you start recording, then there's a whole new phase of creativity and ideas and changes that starts happening from that point on. But I'm a big believer of really arranging the basic raw material to the highest level you can reach without recording and then go ahead and record. I mean, there are, of course, different situations, especially if it's an artist you already worked with a lot. Sometimes you can just jump right in and start recording and everything's happening.
Yeah.
But when it's a first time and you just met or it's a debut album for an artist, normally you really, really need that pre-production process. Yeah, I think that's it, you know. I mean, I definitely had situations where without any preparations, we just went in and started recording something which turned out great and we kind of took it from there, but it will almost always be with somebody that I already have a relationship with, or we already did a few things and we feel comfortable enough, you know, in a way.
So you were talking about how you want to make the song as amazing as possible in terms of like its structure, its arrangement, and everything else that goes into it. Well, can you talk to me a little bit about what influences your decisions when it comes to structure and arrangement?
Wow, that's a complex question. There's one more point that you haven't pointed out, which is very important, is the way it's presented, meaning what's the right emotion or what's the right way to sing it and tell the story, you know, which is also very, very important, just as important as form and so on. I guess I kind of have to answer this in different stages, because when it comes to scale, I normally like checking a lot of scales. Of course, especially if I feel there's a problem, but sometimes you'll be surprised when moving between scales, you hear a lot of interesting parts of the singer's voice, and you can kind of learn about his range or her range and find new colors to the same song just by switching scales. And for me, I guess it's hard to describe this, but I kind of know normally there's like this feeling you get in your body when it sounds amazing just because it's the right scale. You know, I can't really explain it in a more logical way. But yeah, it's normally a good fit between the range of the vocalist and the song. And I'm saying it this way for a reason, because sometimes it's good for it to be on the high edge, let's say, of the register for the singer, because it's a song that when the singer is making an effort, it's more emotional. And sometimes it would be the other way around, that it's not comfortable enough for the vocalist, so you need to find like a more comfortable zone so he can perform or she can perform better on a technical aspect. But it's really complicated, but I really like checking that out because it can really make a very, very big influence. And it's always something also between the melody and the harmony, because I'm a big believer that every scale has its own ring to it in a way, and a specific set of harmony progression would sound good with a melody of a singer's vocal range on a specific scale. And I can't explain it any further. You kind of have to listen through all options and see what works best. One thing I can say, which is really interesting, and I really double-checked myself 100 of times about this, but there's an interesting thing that you should try it at home, as you say. If you're listening to a song, let's say, on A, okay? Then it might sound, let's say, either dark or bright, and then if you would move one step up or down, it would twist around. So if it was dark, it would sound brighter, and if it was bright, it would sound darker. And then when you move one more half step, like you would have a full tone away from the original scale, it would again be like the original scale. So there's this thing between half steps that really changes the general color in a way. And if you if you kind of check it with a few songs, you'll see there's really something to it. So normally, even if everything sounds great, I would want to listen to half a step up or half a step down to see what happens if we change the color a little bit.
Wow. It's funny that you said that, because I do think that I've noticed that, and I don't think I've been consciously aware enough of the fact that is the case. So thanks for pointing that out.
It's like a test you can have, you know. You start with A, go half a step, then go another half step, and then you'll see that every full tone, it sounds similar to the other one, you know. And then when it comes to tempo, for me, it's less about tempo at that stage, more about groove. What's the right rhythmic feel? And, you know, a lot of times when a singer-songwriter brings in a song on an acoustic guitar, the acoustic guitar is actually the drum part and not the guitar part. You know what I mean? Because they would play the groove that they want the song to have. And it's normally a very busy acoustic guitar part that you would normally won't keep it on the final production, but it might say a lot about what's the right groove or like, let's say, the basic clave of the song, like the one loop that kind of holds it together in terms of feel and groove. And then if you got the right groove, you also know the right time, because, you know, you just find the exact right BPM. And again, here I found that sometimes it's a matter of 1 BPM here or there to make a very big change.
Totally. Yeah. BPM, like 1 BPM can make all the difference.
Yeah. And I can say that I've seen a lot of artists giving up on recording to click because they just didn't get to the exact right BPM. So it feels bad, you know, and then because when it's straight and quantized on the wrong BPM, it's horrible. But when it's right on the right one, it's great. It's the best it'll ever sound, you know?
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's funny. The other day I was working on a track and like I recorded something on the piano and it felt right in terms of the rhythm. And then once I started to play along with it on an acoustic guitar, it felt way too slow. I was playing a faster rhythm on the acoustic guitar. Yeah. And I literally did what you just told me. Like I just went to, you know, the faster rhythm that I was doing on the guitar, and then everything felt better.
Yeah, absolutely. That can happen.
So what else do you do to get like more emotional impact out of a song?
Well, and now, now to the most interesting part of it, because the scale and the tempo or groove is more technical. There's this more emotional part to the pre-production part of a song, is that you need to kind of be able not to dig too much deep into it, but be able to discuss it with the artist and really open it up, you know, and understand, what do you want to say here? How should you say it? What's the story? Why did you write this song? What are you trying to say? What, you know, I mean, and I guess it really, really changes between every person and every song too, because some songs are very sensitive, you know, and they touch like gentle parts of the human spirit. And some are more lightweight, so it's a little easier to discuss. And again, you know, I've been to this Grammy Institute workshop with a great producer called Mike. I forgot his last name, but he's very famous. He produced Guns N' Roses' famous album. And they asked him a question on stage: what is the most important one characteristic that a producer must have? And he took a lot of time to think, like a few minutes, and then he said, you know what? There's only one thing: trust. And I think I really connect to this, because this is what it's about. I mean, the relationship between an artist and a producer should be based on trust. If you can't establish trust, you won't be able to do anything right, you know? And I think he said it the best way. He said, if they're not going to believe you when you say it's bad, they're never going to believe you when you say it's good and it's done, you know? So you have to be really honest all the time, but honesty is a gentle thing, because you can be honest in a way that throws people out, and you can be honest in a way that brings people in, you know. So of course we're looking for the second option as producers, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a fine line to be, you know, completely honest with an artist. Mm-hmm. Amazing. So is there anything else that you do in that regard?
On the pre-production, I guess that's more or less what it is. It's just really opening it up in a way and being able to discuss it a little bit. And again, only to the point where it's still not interfering with the energetic field. I don't know how else to say it. And But then when you actually record, it's a different world. You have to get the artist into a comfort zone on one hand, and then on the other hand, really on his toes, so it's still very exciting, you know, so it's really complicated to get to that point. And again, every person has different ways of getting there, so you need to learn. And again, if you have trust, you can always get there together. That's why it's so important, you know?
Yeah. So once you're getting into like the recording stage of things, how does that usually come together, chronologically speaking?
I don't believe in time order in this aspect. Again, I'm trying to start with the most important thing. And then for me, once I feel like I have one track which is good, I'm trying to add stuff to it. I think most mistakes on production happen when you try to work by those set of rules. You got to do drums first and then harmony or whatever. Because normally what happens then is the most important part is left to be last. And then you don't have any kind of guideline if you are all in the right direction with the production, you know. So for me, again, when it comes to, it's easier to talk about it when it comes to songwriters and singers. You should start with the song. If the song is there and it's working just as a vocal, what I would normally do, by the way, is I would close any element that's there, that was there used as a guide, if it's a guitar or a band or whatever it is, and I would just listen to the vocal. And then I would start trying to imagine what can fit in front of this, what can fit in the back of this, what can fit on the sides of this vocal. And then basically, honestly, I think that's where it becomes a playground, and that's where the studio becomes an amazing tool, because you can try stuff. But I guess the biggest rule when trying stuff, in order for it to actually work and make sense, is if something doesn't work with that lead track that you have, just delete it, you know, because I think people really are tempted to keep every little idea they had, and then they're ending up with a pile of tons of ideas which don't really relate together. And it's really, I mean, when you talk about arrangement, what is arrangement? It's to arrange specific things together. And then if it's well arranged, it could be well mixed and it could sound good. And if you have too many things loading the system, it would never ever sound good. And then your mixing session becomes a muting session, and it's all horrible and nobody understands what's going on, you know? So,
yeah. So you very much commit to the sounds you choose.
Absolutely. I'm you know, sometimes, of course, I'm a little bit not sure, so I would leave two alternatives. But for me, I'm trying to record it as closer to what I think it should be, also in terms of it should sound like you want it to sound when you record it, not after you record it, for me. And I kind of like to think of the Pro Tools screen as like a clear canvas for a painting. So I would only leave the stuff that should really be there. I don't want the paint to dry with the wrong painting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. So it sounds like you visualize a lot of the creative decisions you make, and it's less experimenting with sounds. Like you kind of have an idea when you hear something.
No,
Is that true?
would not exactly, because I would experiment a lot. That's what I said when it becomes a playground, in a sense that when you have a good lead, you can play around and you don't have to know everything up front. You can say, oh, I think maybe this idea would work. And honestly, normally the 10th try after that first idea might surprise you and be the best idea you never thought about, you know? But you kind of have to get to that point in a specific situation. Most people, because you have so many technological abilities today to do anything you want on the computer, kind of, then most people jump in too quickly to just recording before they have any kind of sense of direction. And it's just like any journey. If you have no sense of direction, you'll probably get lost. And if you started with a good sense of direction, you're definitely going to have some adventures on the way, but you know where you're going in general. Again, I can say I think every song I produced ended up being a little different than anything I imagined up front, you know? But
yeah.
So for me, I'm trying to stay connected again to that center, that emotional center that we found on the initial meeting, that first hearing when we knew the song is working, because it should still feel like that after you produce it, you know, which is not it sounds easy, but it's not, to be honest.
No, it sounds very difficult. Are you imagining that emotion in your head while you're searching for, you know, things to add to the song?
Absolutely. I think that emotional center is the guideline all the time. I kind of check every little thing. Does it really add to that center? Does it make it stronger? Does it make it bigger? Does it help to what I'm trying to achieve? You know, I would always ask for that when I'm working in my own mind and heart, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing. So do you have any templates when you're getting started in the DAW in Pro Tools?
Absolutely not.
Wow.
No, again, I'm trying to look the Pro Tools. That's for me, templates is exactly what is dangerous in the new age of production, because it's not a clean slate. How can you make art on an unclean slate? It's a technical approach to something that could be very productive and very fast and so on, but you can never ever be neutral and really be clean with your emotional analysis if you have a template going on in front of you, you know?
Wow. Do you even have templates for mixing?
No, absolutely not. I mean, again,
Wow.
but I mean, I'm saying absolutely not. But let's say if I'm working on a jazz record and it's all the same tracks, and I work on one track that kind of describes the album, and I get to a specific direction that works, definitely I would save the settings of the plugins and maybe bring it to start the next mix again.